All right. Well, welcome potential candidates of California Deca to our State Officer Candidate Information Meeting. Super excited to talk through the process. And before we jump in any further, I just have to give a shout out to each and every one of you because you're here. All right. That's a huge deal. There's thousands, there's a lot of members in California across the whole state. And we've got, about 15 of us here in person. That's amazing. Now I know somebody might have had to, walk their fish, whatever, and had stuff to do and couldn't make it on the call. And that's fine. Hello to any of you watching the recording. But I just want to give a shout out to you because having that type of mindset of oh, there's this leadership position. Maybe it's for me, maybe not, but just to feel it out, it says something about you. And so I just want you to know that and own that. Because I'm excited. I love hanging out with cool people, and you showing up today means that you've got some cool in you. And so that's exciting. So thank you for your examples. Thank you for your greatness. And we're going to dive in. So the point of this and what you're going to learn here is I'm going to go through the process of becoming a candidate and then running for that position, for a position on the state officer team. Okay. All of this is going to be looked at through the lens that we anticipate that our district and state conferences are in person, back to normal, as we went through a few years ago, of looking at in-person conferences for district, for elections, for voting, and all of that. Okay. Now, here's the disclaimer, right? If that happens to change for any reason, that information will be communicated to you, even if it wasn't strictly outlined in the candidate guide. We will do our part to communicate any changes to the process to you as much as advanced as we can give it to you. But we'll work together to overcome any barriers or any adjustments we have to make. Okay, so that's the deal that we'll make. So we're moving forward, planning that all of the conferences are going to be in person, that the elections will be, and all signs indicate that that is true. But we'll see how things shake out. Okay. So how we'll look at this is the California Deca state team prepares every year a candidate guide. And so I want to walk through this process. This is your go-to for all information. Okay. And so first, here is how you can be able to access that. So going to our California Deca website, you can say hi to all of our amazing little officers. Yay. Thanks for being here. But then you could hit the tab of candidates. And we are going to scroll down to the State Officer Candidate Guide 2022. All right. So that is where you'll go to access. And then you can download it if you want, or just, bookmark the link, whatever you got to do, and be able to take it from there. And look, there's again that wonderful officers. They are awesome. They're a great team. I give them a hard time because I get to work with them a lot. But then we can scroll through. Okay. So first, there's the big long table of contents. It is linked, right? So if you click on parts, it'll be able to take you to where you want to go. Okay. And so you can look at our great letter from our great state director, Mr. Bryson Woodley. He's awesome. He encourages all of us to be able to participate and consider this. This is a letter geared towards our advisors, which brings up the first point of being a candidate. All right. There are no secret candidates. And what I mean by that is you can't run for a state office position and your chapter doesn't know about it. Okay. So from the get-go, you got to make sure that you're having a conversation with your chapter advisor about being a candidate. Okay, you won't get very far in the process without your candidate or without your chapter knowing that that's what you're trying to make happen. Okay, so that's why that's geared towards chapter advisors in that opening letter. All right, we'll keep going. So obtaining support from your local chapter is super important. And so right off the bat, there's a form on the website that if you are serious about being a candidate, and it doesn't commit you to have to pay money or your name's going to be published anywhere. But your first step is having your advisor fill out the intent to run form. Okay. So what that will look like is on this page back here on the candidate page, there's this intent to run form. Okay. So that just helps us get your basic info of what positions are you considering? What's your email address? And just hearing from your chapter that, hey, they feel good about you potentially being a candidate. And so that's the first step. Okay. So that is an important piece for us to look at, is that intent to form. So again, intent to run. So again, you've got to get your chapter buy-in from this, which comes through your advisor. So make sure you take a look at that. There is the note about the Cte requirement. I'm going to go through that in depth because there's questions about that and that kind of stuff. So we'll cover all of Okay. Now the role of the advisor. Okay. So this is again for your advisor, just to help them understand, hey, we need some things from them to help us. And then if you're elected or appointed as an officer, there's some things that we need from your advisor, but most of the time the state team just takes care of it directly with officers. So that's just to explain some of, if you come from like a smaller chapter or a chapter that hasn't had state officers in a while, that's totally okay. And we want you to know that you shouldn't feel that as a barrier. Your advisor isn't going to get a ton of extra work by having a state officer in their chapter, right? That'd be lame. So instead, it's like, hey, we're going to work together. I work closely with the advisors to make sure that they just are in the know, and then I take care of the rest, right? So that's kind of the point of that. All right, so getting right into the meat of it for this, the Career and Technical Education Course Requirement. Okay, so here's a little thing you can see at the bottom of each page. California Deca is chartered by the California Department of Education and endorsed as an essential component of business education. Okay, so career technical education is a huge deal in California Deca. The Department of Education is awesome in California and really tries to put a lot of support toward integrating career technical education into your classrooms. Okay, and so now by doing that, the Department of Ed says, hey, we're going to throw a lot of support and money and resources towards California Deca in this case. And so we have some rules that you got to follow to be able to take advantage of in Deca. And so that's where this comes from, is they say, all right, if you're going to elect your leaders, we need them to make sure that they're following what we'll deem as the Cte Course Requirement, okay? Because Deca is a co-curricular program, which means it goes right in with the classroom experience, there's some key eligibility requirements, okay? So first, the high school that the candidate attends must offer a CTE program or pathway that's aligned with the standards of Deca. Most of us are in that. That means, yes, we're good. You can talk with your advisor about specifics there, but most of you are taken care of there. But the next parts is where it gets specific to your involvement there, okay? So yes, there must be an active Deca chapter at the school that you attend. And you got to be, that chapter needs to be in good standing with California Deca. That's kind of obvious, right? The advisor of the candidate's chapter must teach one of the courses in the pathway. Again, it's just making sure the pathway exists and it's functioning and it's working at the school. Okay, but then where we get to the bottom, where it comes to you need to be currently enrolled or have completed the pathway based on whatever area it focuses on. Okay. And so what California or what the Department of Education wants is our students in California Deca to consistently be enrolled in the CTE courses until you've either completed the pathway, right? Or you've still got work to do and you're in those classes. So for our state officers, the requirement is that you are currently enrolled or you've already completed the pathway at your school. Now, what this means, okay? So now if you are a student that has any questions of this, of like, oh, I'm going to be registered next semester when the elections happen, or like, there wasn't a class offered right now, but there will be when I set up my new class schedule. All of that, okay? I understand that there can be questions about what about this? What if in this case? And here is the plan of action, all right? For you to be able to still qualify as a candidate, if you are not currently enrolled in a CTE course, then what we need to have happen is your local chapter advisor needs to reach out to our state advisor. Her name is Molly Anderson. She is our state advisor from the Department of Education. And your chapter advisor needs to email our state advisor, Mrs. Anderson, and just explain the circumstance of like, hey, so-and-so our candidate, I'll use Ramya, our president, as the example. Ramya, she's not currently enrolled. She will be next semester because that's when the next class is offered or whatever the details are. And then they'll figure it out, okay? Unfortunately, it's not my, not unfortunately, it's not my role to make exceptions or anything like that. I just follow the steps of the requirements. And so that's what I do. So how we hold you accountable for this, and we'll talk about this later, but a part of the application is to submit a copy of your transcript. And that's what we go to look at to qualify candidates. Are you currently registered in a CTE course in your pathway? Yes, great. No? Oh, and then that's when we'll go to our state advisor, Molly Anderson, to see has any exceptions been made between the chapter and you to still make it okay. And then she'll tell us, yeah, these ones are all good. And then we say, great. Then we move forward. And so overall, just to make sure this is clear, if you aren't currently enrolled in a CTE course, but you still can be because you haven't officially completed the pathway yet at your school, like all of the CTE courses at your school, have your advisor reach out to our state advisor, Molly Anderson from the Department of Ed. If they need her email, then have your advisor reach out to our state team, and we can point them in the right direction. Okay. So to overcome any hurdles or anything there, that is our course of action. Okay. So what that transcript will look like when we do, and I'll dive into the specific details, but that will be just up to that point. What have you taken at school? Right. So it could show, hey, I've already completed all the CTE courses at my school, or hey, I'm enrolled now and moving forward, and that kind of thing. So you'll work with your chapter advisor and your school administration to get a picture, basically a screenshot, a copy of your transcript, and then we'll submit there. But we'll walk through this exact steps when we get to that point within the application. Okay, great. So the CTE requirement, we'll make sure that we're all on the same page there. And like I said, your advisor can reach out to our state advisor to get any exception or clarification or anything like that. Okay, all right, we'll keep rolling. So now, is running for state office right for me? Okay, so we have a page here, and then I think we've got 3 of our current state officer team. And so I'm going to have each of them just kind of share a quick thought of what they think you should consider if you are considering being a state officer. But just overall, is being a state officer right for me? There's a little blurb that you can read here. A few key things, just some overview pieces, is just, we communicate a lot as a state officer team. You'll communicate with the state president, or if you're the state president, then you'll communicate with me often as the coach and our state team. And so there's a good amount of communication and coordination. We meet a few times a month as an entire team. Sometimes me and the president will talk and catch up more than that. And then we work on your tasks. You'll set goals for the year that'll get approved by the board, and we'll talk more about this process. But then you work on your projects throughout the year. Now that's the boring answer, while I gave them time to think of something. And so for our current officer team, I'd love to hear any thoughts for you of just saying, hey, you know what you should consider for being a state officer is this, and anything that you want to share. So let's see, can I just call you out? Deca, can you start us off and introduce yourself, each of you, of like your position and what chapter you're from, and then you can share your advice.
Hi, everyone. I'm Deca. I'm a senior at Washington High School, and I am the Vice President of Leadership for California Deca. And I guess my biggest thing to consider is just not only like making sure you have time to put in if you're able to become a state officer, but it's also really important to know that all these different initiatives you take, as much as it's important about taking that initiative, it's also important about the results. So just make sure to always just make sure you don't just have time to take those initiatives, but you also have time to kind of make sure if you're not getting the results you want, you put in extra time. So yeah, I guess that was my biggest piece of advice.
Very cool. Thank you, Deca. I love that. Super good advice when it just comes to just make sure you have the time, because your projects are yours. It's not like you set a goal and then I go do the work and make it happen. That's not how it works. Okay. And so making sure you have time ready to invest in there is super helpful. Thank you for that. How about Daniel?
Hi, everyone. I'm Daniel Dolan. I'm from Del Norte High School. I'm a junior there, and I'm currently our Vice President of Marketing. Again, the time thing is a really important one. Just make sure that you have the time that you can spend on it. And another thing that I would say is make sure that you're good working with people and collaborating with people. No one on the state officer team is an island. No one is segmented off doing their own projects and just sending them to Scott when they're done. Everyone works alongside each other. Everyone's cooperating with each other. Make sure that you're good with that, because that's a really important part of being a state officer.
Very cool. Thank you, Daniel. Love that. Appreciate it. And then last but not least, our state president, Ramya.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ramya. I'm a senior from Irvington High School, and I'm this year's state president. And I was also last year's VP of marketing. So I think there's a lot of things when it comes to making sure you're a good fit for state office. Again, first is time management, like Deca said. making sure that it's not a year, it's not like a choppy position where like, oh, every 2 weeks you like catch up with your team. You always have to make sure that you're there for your organization, meaning that response time matters, right? Like if your team is asking for help, if people like chapter presidents are texting you for like information, you always want to make sure that your response time is like fast and timely, because like even though like sometimes you might have things going on in your life, you're elected as the person that they need to like reach out to when they have questions. So making sure that you're always there, you're always approachable, you're not like scary and like unavailable, like make sure that you're always there for your people. Also, just I guess making sure you're ready to talk to anyone. There's going to be people that you don't vibe with at all times, but then there's going to be people that you vibe with a lot. So making sure that you're able to like talk to all different types of people. And also just again, like Vedika said, follow through. Like don't come into your like term with having like a bunch of goals and then not accomplish like any of it. You want to make sure that your time make use of your time, because you have a lot of, I guess, like not power, but like initiative and the ability to create like a lot of change. And so making sure that you're responsible with it and making sure that you're doing something with your time in state office, not just for the position, but to like help the members themselves. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Very cool. I love it. Love it. Thank you so much for that. And so, yes, overall, just being somebody that wants to serve the members of California DECA, right? That's the most important. So having a level of being able to be personable with them, approachable, being game to answer questions from whoever, no matter who it is, right? Or having to work with or speak with different types of people and groups of people. It's so important because being a state officer is a student leadership position. And to be a leader, it means you're influencing and helping other people be awesome. Okay. Being a leader is not just being awesome at DECA. Okay. And so now you might be a top performer, ICDC champ, woohoo, good for you. That's amazing. That doesn't make you a leader. And we want leaders as our state officers, which means that you're looking to help other people, not just there for yourself. I get being a state officer looks good on the resume and all that kind of stuff. Like I get that. That's yes, true. But that might be what gets you here to the meeting, but what should keep you around and make you want to be a state officer should be that motivation to say, you know what, I want to give back. I want to help other chapter members. I want to help chapter officers. I want to serve this organization. And so that should be our overall focus. All right. So we're going to talk more about the specific qualifications. I see that question, Elijah. We'll make sure we address that. But is running for a state office right for you? Okay. A key thing to think about. Okay, so let's go through the positions just real quick and just the overview here. And the processes are a little bit different depending on which position you are interested in. Okay, so elected at our state conference, meaning the bulk of your actual process happens at state conference. That is for our state president. And then our two appointed positions of vice president of marketing and vice president of leadership. We'll talk more about that in just a second. Elected at district conferences are your district vice president positions. Okay, so they run at whatever your district is, right? So you might be in Silicon Valley, Southern California, Northern California. You will run at that district conference. You'll get elected at that district conference. And then at state, you still have a little bit of roles, but at that point, you are the vice president elect for your district. Okay, so that's when that one all happens. So specifically the elected office, you got to be obviously from your district, right, to be elected. And then being elected is just that. You will be voted in by voting delegates from the chapters in your district or across the state. Okay, so across the state for the state president, in your district for the district president, vice presidents. Okay, so you're actually elected, which means you'll run a campaign. We'll talk more about that here in a little bit. The appointed offices are appointed by an interview panel. Okay, so these two positions are a little bit more specific of saying, hey, there's specific skills and experience that we're looking for. And so rather than have it just be an elected office, a committee is assembled to say, hey, here's the specific skills, who's got the most of them, right? Who's the best? And we appoint those individuals. Okay, so that's just the quick overview. To go into the specifics, you heard from our officers, they have different positions, but California DECA follows DECA's recommended mission-based officer positions, which is cool. And so you can read more about that. Each of the state officers, other than the state president, has a specific mission area that they focus on. So that could be leadership, focusing on all the cool stuff about DECA outside of competition. Career development focuses on competition. VP of marketing, right, helping everybody understand what cool things are available in California DECA. VP of Finance, practicing that, support, service, and fundraising, different things there. VP of Hospitality, we're looking at membership experience in that way, making sure that that can be the highest level possible. You can read more about that too. And all of the officers, the current officers, are totally game. If you have questions, just reach out to them and say, hey, what does that mean? What do you do? All of that good stuff. Please let them know. Okay, so you can read through the roles and responsibilities. I'm not going to dive into all of that. There's a section up at the top that's for all officers. So it's like, no matter what position you have, this is you, but then specific ones for each position. Okay, so each district vice president will be assigned a mission area, either career development, either finance or hospitality. And so that happens after the election process, but just know that as well. So you'd be a district vice president in charge of your district and a mission area. So you kind of have a little bit of a dual role there. Okay, so again, you can reach out if you have any questions about that piece. All right, eligibility requirements. Let my computer catch up to me here. So just running through the quick list. These are the top level expectations that you got to have to be able to be approved as a candidate. Okay, so here's what we're looking for. Be an active member in good standing in Deca, right? So that's where it's easy to prove this. We just hear from your chapter, right? From your chapter advisor. The candidate should have held or be holding a Deca chapter office, but hey, it's not required, okay? Recommended, not required. So it doesn't rule you out if you haven't been a chapter officer yet. We need you at least at a 2.5 GPA, okay? For the term right before you would become a state officer. And then you got to just have the expectation, you got to keep that at a 2.5 throughout your whole office, all right? So keep that in mind. And then here's that Cte Pathway requirement, again, that you're enrolled. And that can be enrolled at least until you finish your pathway. So keeping that in mind, that's what these two are. Okay, a candidate may be a freshman, sophomore, or junior. And so that's where you'll see like, hey, if you're a first year Deca member right now and you want to run, great, let's do it. There's not going to be an explicit like first year Deca members cannot run. So you're game. But if you are a current senior, then you're off riding into the sunset. And so you won't be able to be elected as a state officer, right? Because you got to currently be a California Deca member, which makes sense. So as much as we want Ramya to stick around for a third term, we can't. It's against the rules. Sorry, Ramya. Okay. So that's that piece. Your position starts as soon as state conference is over, and then you go until that new team gets elected. Okay. So that's kind of the term year. How that works. And then you have to complete and submit all forms and documentation. All right. It is competitive to be an officer. Don't make it easy to rule you out because you turned something in late or you didn't turn it all in or anything like that. It's too easy. Like the positions are too competitive and California Deca is too competitive that if you don't have everything done, it's just an easy out. It's just like, all right, cool. Like you're out. Like it's binary like that. So make sure you follow the process as outlined. Then here's this last piece to kind of spread the leadership across the state. Each chapter may run up to 2 candidates for state office, and you can't both be running for the same position. So that's something you have to figure out at the chapter level. That's not my job. You got to figure that out with your advisor and your chapter. If there's a bunch of you that want to run for state office, you got to figure that out at the chapter level of who's going to run. You got to do your own little mini vote if you want, whatever. Interview process, that's up to you. But you just got to keep that in mind. Okay, no more than 2, and you can't both run for the same like district vice president position or vice president of marketing, right? It has to be different positions. Okay, cool. We'll move right along here. So we've got the application requirements. All right, so here is the process that all candidates will follow, and then the next sections will show you the specific timeline for the position that you might be running. So, right, state president, district vice presidents, and appointed positions all follow similar, like different processes a little bit, right? There's a little kink to each of them. Okay, so just keep that in mind. All right, so the overview. You got to complete the knowledge test, complete all the forms, do a commercial, and submit a portfolio, and make sure you follow all of the guidelines and requirements. Okay, so let's run through it step by step. Okay, step 1, intent to run form. I already mentioned this, but the first thing is we need your advisor to fill out the intent to run form. It's on that candidate's page, and they have to fill it out because they have to actually sign electronically that they are saying, yes, this member of our chapter or these 2 members of our chapters are who we support to be an officer. Okay, so that's step 1. Super easy, but you got to get that done. All right. Then where we go from there, hey, candidate information session, you're here. Good job. Congratulations. If anyone needs to watch the recording or anything, this video will be published on the California Deca YouTube channel. Woohoo, you're all YouTube stars. Just kidding, just me, because it's just my face on the camera. All right, step 3, Deca knowledge exam. Okay, so the knowledge exam is what you got to do. You got to get a score of 90%. All right. So what the knowledge exam is, there's a study guide here on the candidate page, so you can go look at that. All of the questions come off the study guide. Okay, so I mean, we're not trying to like be super intense. It's just you need to know the basics of Deca to be a state officer, and I don't have time to teach you that. Like, you should start with the basic information. Okay, so that's why we do this. So advisors either by, okay, so here's the 2 ways to do this intent to run form, or to email us, email me at coach@California Deca, and then we will send you a code. Okay, and we'll send the advisor the code and the instructions, and then they take care of like proctoring that with you. Okay, it's up to them. They own it. Of like, here's how it'll work, right? So if it's like after class one day, or during class, or after a chapter meeting, or however you figure it out between you and your advisor, we send the advisor the access information. They provide it to you. Okay, so that's how this works. And so we've already started dishing these out to those of you, if your advisor has already filled out the intent to run form, or has emailed coach@californiadeca.org. But you got to do this before December 1st. Okay, so you've got to take the knowledge test. So even if you're running for state president, which nothing else happens until way later, you got to take the knowledge test right now. Okay, every candidate has to take the knowledge exam before the end of November to move on as a candidate. All right, you got to be super clear about that. So you have to make sure that you take care of that. So now the advisor will serve most likely. Yes, the chapter advisor is going to proctor that. So like I said, they'll handle all the details for you. And then if you don't get a 90% score, you can retake the knowledge test. You just have to wait 24 hours. And then the system will automatically reset, where the advisor will give you the same access information, and then you can take it again. So the only barrier that you have is just running until the end of the month, right? So if you take it today, you don't get 90%, you can take it again tomorrow. You just got to wait 24 hours for the system to clear again, and then away you can go. Okay, so before December 1st, all right? So that's where we're at on that one. Next, the candidate application forms. Okay, so all forms listed on the forms section, and I'll quickly go through those later. But every single form that's offered, these forms are ones that you actually have to print and get signed. So there are physical copies of these, okay? So you get them printed out, you get them signed by, it'll be you, your parents, your advisor, your school administrator. Those 4 levels we need signatures for on a couple of different forms. And so then you get those filled out, you get them signed, and then you submit them all at once on the application portal, okay? So it's not just like, oh, get this one form signed and then turn it in, do the other one, then turn that in. You turn them all in together. So make sure you get them all done, and then you go to fill out your application. And that's through an online form that's, again, found on this candidate page down here, okay? So here's the study guide for the knowledge test. We'll email you the info for the knowledge test, and then you can click that link and it'll take you to the place to go. That's the intent to run form that your advisor needs to fill out. Here's where you will upload all of your signature pages, and there's the application that's part of that too. Okay, but we'll talk more about that. All right. Okay, so we'll dive in more into the forms, but it is a physical copy that you get signed, and you scan it and submit it as part of the application. All right, step 5, commercial video. Okay, each candidate, so no matter what position you're running for, each candidate must submit a pre-recorded 30-second commercial that highlights who you are and why you should be a state officer. So what we're looking at, okay, and it gets real specific on the guidelines for this. The 30 seconds starts as soon as your video file starts, right? So there's no, like, you can start with a black screen, and then as soon as it comes to see your face, then the time starts. No, we're not trying to be fancy. The video file itself has to be 30 seconds or less, okay? So that's when the time begins and ends. Videos should be of you, the candidate, speaking, okay? You can include some graphics. If you want to do some little whoosh letters and words and stuff to go on the screen, that's fine. But the main focus needs to be you, the candidate, okay? And the whole point is to showcase why you, the candidate, would make a good state officer. So yes, you can have other members, you know, or friends or whoever help you shoot it, edit it, design it, but you need to be the only one talking. Okay, so this isn't like a whose chapter can put together the craziest, awesomest video, or like who's the most popular and can have 5,000 people in their video. Like it's you. Like you can show yourself in a chapter situation or something like that, but it's you talking. You're the focus of the video. You're the one talking about why you would be an awesome candidate. Okay. So even it's not like who of the California Deca legends can you get to be in your video and say, I recommend this candidate for being like, it's none of that. We're not trying to be fancy. Like it's you talking about why you would be a good state officer. Okay. So you submit those to us, and then just know that we will use those. They'll either be on the conference website for district or state conference, or they'll be made available in other ways. And so we just do our part to make sure that the members can get to know you through these videos. Okay. So now these all are reviewed before we get to election process and stuff. And so if you're being dumb, your video is going to be removed. And guess what? So are you as a candidate. Okay. So don't be dumb and try to think you're going to sneak something crazy into state conference or whatever. That's dumb. Like you're not going to make it that far and you're just going to embarrass yourself. All right. So don't do that. Okay. So some specific steps about submitting that video. You will submit the video as part of the application on this page. Candidate application form and signature page is uploaded. I encourage you to look at that. You have to have everything to fill that out. All of your signature pages, your video ready, like you submit everything at one time in that application form. Okay. So just make sure you keep that in mind. All right. Moving on. Next, after you submit everything, okay, which we'll go in through the specific timelines and stuff, for each set of positions, we will have a video briefing, an online briefing meeting for all of the qualified candidates. So after you submit your application, we will respond in like about a week to confirm you as a candidate after we've reviewed everything. And then we'll say, great, you need to come to this briefing meeting, which will prepare you for your next conference, whether that's district or state conference. Okay. And so here's the information about that. But you will have to attend it. If you can't attend, then we set it up for you and your advisor to watch the recording. And then I have to hear from your advisor that you've watched the video, or your journey stops right there. Like if we don't confirm that you've seen the information from the briefing and you've ghosted us, then sorry, you can't be a candidate, because obviously that's not a very good sign for a potential state officer, right? So we will have that required meeting after you're confirmed as a candidate, just to make sure you're prepared for the conference. All right, next one, portfolios. These are required for appointed positions. So that's VP of Marketing and VP of Leadership. But we highly suggest that all candidates have these. But that's up to you if you're one of these elected candidates. Okay. So how this will work is it needs to be a physical portfolio that you'll have like at your booth and stuff. But for those appointed positions, we will also have a virtual. We need a digital portfolio submitted as part of your application. Okay. So you can read more specifics about like, what should I include in my portfolio and all that kind of stuff. That's on the candidate guide. But we need a digital copy for the appointed positions when you turn in your application. Now, you'd submit a digital copy and you're like, ooh, but after I submitted, while I was getting ready for the conference, I thought of a couple more things I want to include in my portfolio. Can I print those out and have them in my printed portfolio when I'm campaigning at the conference? Yes, that's fine. But what this does, the printed or the electronic portfolios just helps our interview committee. They'll review those before the interviews just so they have a good feel. And then when you're on site in those interviews, and we'll talk about this, but you'll bring your physical portfolio and they can flip through and see anything extra that you added, but at least they have, the draft one of your portfolio. So you still want it to represent you well, because that's like the committee's first impression of you, right? So don't be lame. So you'll want it to be a good representation of you. But then you can make some minor adjustments based on like when you get to your in-person campaign and that kind of stuff. Okay. So portfolio, you can read through that, ask your advisor, ask the state officers for any advice there. And that's one of the other main parts of the submission process. Okay. Campaign rules. I'm not going to worry about this a lot right now because first we got to get you confirmed as a candidate, but you can read through here just to know what you expect. At that candidate briefing meeting, we go through in very key details of like all of the guidelines of being a candidate, campaigning, the election, all of that kind of stuff. Okay. So you just get a feel for what that looks like, but you don't have to memorize it just to be a candidate. All right. Worry about getting your signature forms first, and then we'll talk about the election process. All right. So next, it goes into the specific processes of the positions. So you have your district vice president. Here's your deadlines and the process to be a district vice president. Here's the specifics to know what will happen if you are a confirmed candidate. Like, do I have to give a speech? Yes. Do I have to go into an interview? Yes. What are the election procedures? Here are those, right? So you can read that through if you want to be a district vice president. If you are elected, if you're the district vice president elect, there is a role that you'll have at the state conference. We'll talk more about that later if you're elected, but you can look at that now. State president, if you want to run for state president, here's the process, all right? So we have a board screening interview for, these positions that get elected at state conference, but we do that at the district conference. I'll reach out and confirm all those details. But again, you can just scan through and look at the process to be a state president candidate, okay? You'll do a board screening interview. Will you give a speech? Yes. You'll do another interview at the state conference. Here's the election procedures. All of it is lined out for you, okay? Next, you've got in the last section is the appointed position. So again, the VP of Marketing and VP of Leadership. Here's the process for them, okay? So again, you'll see a lot of similarities, but there's a couple of tweaks just based on what position. So you will also get a screening interview by a member of the board at district conference, most likely. You don't give a speech, but you'll participate in everything else. You'll get interviewed. And then here's the process of being interviewed as a candidate. Okay, so you can read through that specific process. All right, last section. I know I've been talking for a long time, so thanks for bearing with me. But the specific state officer forms. Okay, so here it outlines everything that is needed, your checklist, if you will. Okay, the notification form we've already talked about is an online form, so it's submitted separately. But then we're going to read through and just highlight each of these. Okay. They're in this form, what you need to print. So the application, the signature pages, that's through the form. The campaign expenditure report form, I'll look at that. Advisor checklist, we'll look at that. We'll look at these state officer forms. But then the transcript, okay? So what you'll do is you will get a copy of your transcript through your school administrators. That will show your high school track record of classes. Like what classes have you taken? What were your grades? And what you'll do with your advisor is you'll go in there and whatever the Cte course that you are either currently enrolled in or you've already taken, you'll go in there and circle it. Okay, so either digitally circle it or print it off and then scan it. But you need to mark so it's very easy for us to recognize. Don't make us hunt it down because it'll make you not like you before you're even elected, right? So circle it, make it nice and easy to recognize that that's the Cte course that you have taken or are in, and then we go from there. Okay, so let me dive in to these forms. One last quick thing: Sunday, November 28th, Wednesday, February 1st. Those are your deadlines. All right. All materials on that form, that online form, everything gets submitted through this online form, right? By 11:59. So right before midnight for all you Cinderellas out there, right? So that is the process for that. Okay. Campaign expenditure report form. So as it lists above, there's a $250 spending limit. And so for this form, what you need to do is simply look at your expenses. What are you planning on spending money on? It's totally fine if you haven't spent any money yet, right? That makes sense because you want to be confirmed as a candidate before you go and spend a bunch of money. And so it's just, what is your plan? I'm going to buy candy for this much, or I'm going to, I need to buy a poster board and supplies or whatever. You just kind of list out what you expect to spend money on. Where did the money come from and where are you going to spend it? Okay, so that's all that one is. And then you sign it and say, yep, I promise to follow the rules. $250, right? So, and you can't just be like, oh, I got donated 3 iMacs that I'm going to give away. Wink, wink. No, that's crazy. All right. So you have $250. Even if it's donated, we take the retail price of what that option would be. And so where does the money come from? Right. So if you're like, if for whatever reason, we'll start at this example. If your chapter, by being a candidate, gives you an allowance of $50, then you just write that. Chapter officer campaign fund, $50. Or it could just be like from you, like personal funds, $250. that kind of like, it's really as simple as that, right? If I did a fundraiser, if it's from my school, anything like that, we just want to kind of keep an easy note of, hey, where'd this money come from? It's totally fine if it's you. You could just say personal funds or family funds or that kind of thing. You don't have to go into specifics. I worked a shift at Chick-fil-A, like whatever. It's just personal funds and then that amount. Okay. But good. Next form is an advisor checklist. This is for you and your advisor to sit down, and your advisor leads you through these talking points just to make sure that you're going to be set up for success as a state officer. They sign it and then you submit it as part of all of your forms. Next is the candidate agreement. Okay, you got to read this through. The thing that I'll specifically highlight is this. Okay, California Deca invests a lot for this officer program. And so we also take you places. Okay. And so what that looks like is like our emerging leader welcome retreat. The first time the state officer team will get together in 2022. Then we have ICDC in Atlanta. The state officers have a huge role in making sure the delegation from California Deca is set up for success. And back to the in-person ICDC. Hey-oh, that's going to be cool. We do a strategic planning retreat with the board of California Deca. There's the Emerging Leader Summit that happens. You're involved in the advisor conference. So you can see all of these dates. In November, California Deca is hosting the Western Region Leadership Conference. So that's a super cool thing. But California Deca state officers will have a role in hosting that conference, which is super fun. But you want to look through these dates because you got to be there. All right. Let me come off real quick. You got to be there. Okay. If you're elected or appointed as a state officer, you got to be there. That's it. Like, we have work for you to do. You're representing your members. And so even over the summer, if you're planning on being a part of any cool summer internship programs or summer programs at some cool school, right? Like I know Wharton does summer stuff and so do a lot of schools in California. You got to be to our stuff or you're not going to be a state officer. All right. So we got to set that expectation right now. Okay. Cool. So you look through the dates, right? And you make sure that that is clear. The other thing that I'll specifically call out is because this doesn't even come close to how much we invest in the officers, but to get you to have a little skin in the game, each officer, once elected and appointed, you don't have to worry about this as a candidate, but you will be responsible to pay a $500 fee to participate as a state officer. You don't have to pay it all at once. Like you could spread it out over months, for example, but you have to pay $500 to be a state officer. It just covers a very small amount, a drop in the bucket for all the travel and uniforms and other accommodations that we make happen. But this is for you to put a little skin in the game, okay? Among other things. So you'll read through this candidate guide or the agreement and you get all these signatures, right? High school administrator, parent, chapter advisor, and candidate. Okay. If you are on a sports team or whatever, it's to get these signatures of like, yeah, we'll support you too. But at a minimum, it's the school administrator, your chapter advisor, your parents, and you. Okay, the next one is a travel authorization form. You'll fill this out. This gives your school administrators and your family a taste of what forms will be required when you do travel with California Deca. So that's what that one looks like. The school administrative statement of support. This is straight from your school being like, yes, we support the state officer. If they need to miss school, we'll help them figure it out. We'll help them work with their teachers. Not that you're going to get out of work, right? But just that you'll take a test early or catch up on homework after or whatever that looks like. And then the last form is a permission and medical release form. And this is so when we are traveling and stuff, if we have anything, if anything dangerous happens to you, that we can cover you really quickly by having some insurance information and that kind of stuff. And so we just have your parents fill this one out so that you can have that there. Okay. And then just in case if you have any questions about like what's changed in this candidate guide, maybe mainly for your advisors, you can look at kind of the history of what that has looked like. Okay. So that is the super short candidate guide. Just kidding. I know it's super intense and it's really long and I'm sorry about that. But I'm the one that has to type it all. Okay. So you should feel bad for me. Just kidding. So is there just one more note on the school administrator? Because these are good questions that'll come up on this. It's up to your school. Okay. So your chapter advisor will like help you get to the school administrator, and it might be your vice principal or your principal. Usually one of those two, or like whatever title that they might have at your school. Usually it's one of those two that's going to sign off, but work with your chapter advisor to make sure you have the right person that signs that from your school's perspective, right? From California Deca perspective, it's like, are they a school administrator? Cool. But from your school perspective, you want to make sure the right person is giving you the thumbs up for that involvement. Okay. So for the transportation form, the travel authorization, what we're looking at that is there's some parts where it's like, how will you travel to and from events? So it's just kind of generically, if you fly, how will you get to the airport? Will you drive yourself, parents? Like, what will that need to look like? Will you need to take an Uber? We just want kind of a pulse of how will the different officers be needing to get themselves to the airport, for example, just so we have that in mind. So kind of generic, your advisor should be able to help you with that, or you can reach out if you have any questions to me, okay? So now at this point, you rely on the candidate guide. Make sure you remember all forms and links to your commercial video and everything has to be submitted through that same application form, okay? That is where it is all required. It all comes down to that application. So you got to make sure you submit that based on the deadline as outlined for the position that you're interested in. Start with the intent to run form with your advisor and make sure you take the knowledge test this month, like by the end of November. And so that will help you get started. coach@californiadeca.org is the way you can get in touch with me. I will help answer all of your questions if you have any, to be able to help us make good things happen and set you up for success as a candidate. And so thank you for watching this recording.